All right, good afternoon, everybody. This is Sean here at Zyxel. So this is our monthly new partner introduction. I'm not doing this from my normal location, so we'll see how things go. That's nice. Dell just popped up an update right in the middle of my presentation. Thank you, Dell. We'll go ahead and get started. So basically what we're going to do today is we're just going to provide sort of a high level overview of who Zyxel is and some of our key products and features that we have for you today. If you have any questions as we go through, use the Q&A part of the Zoom interface to send in your questions. And depending on how things are going, I may answer them right then and there, or I may hold off until the end of today's presentation. So we'll start with a little history about who Zyxel is, what we do. So to begin with, we are not a newcomer to this space. We have been making computer networking equipment since 1989. So we've been doing this for quite a while. I myself have been with Zyxel for over 20 years. We have over 100 million devices deployed out in the field. And we serve 150 different global markets. Now, I am part of what is called Zyxel Networks. So Zyxel Networks is the division of Zyxel that produces products that are aimed at the consumer and business networking space. We have a sister company called Zyxel Communications. So Zyxel Communications is who makes our products that are aimed at ISPs, things like VDSL modems, TR069 managed routers, etc. And we've got a bunch of other sister companies out there. You can see a few of them up here on the page. Probably the main one here is Mitristar. So Mitristar is our manufacturing arm. Mitristar owns and operates factories in Taiwan and China to manufacture our products for us. So as I mentioned earlier, we serve 150 different global markets, and we have physical presence in quite a number of different companies here, or countries, excuse me. So for North America, and for our terminology, North America is the US and Canada. Our headquarters is based out of Anaheim, California. Central America and Mexico are headed out of our Guatemalan office. We have a number of offices in Europe, which is probably our largest market. And then we've got a couple different places where we have R&D. Our main R&D center is going to be in Hsinchu, Taiwan. We also do operate R&D centers in Wuxi, China, and in Germany. So, in addition to just doing what we do ourselves, we partner with a lot of different companies to help provide the solutions that we have. So, we've got some examples up there on the screen. Amazon Web Services hosts most of our internet based offerings. Partner with Ekahau, Wirestorm, McAfee, Norton, Bitdefender, etc. So, now we'll start talking a little bit about our product offerings, and we're going to start by talking about Nebula. So what is Nebula? Why are we starting with it? So Nebula is our free cloud management platform that has the ability to manage our access points, our switches, and our security appliances all through the same interface through the single pane of glass. So that's why we wanted to start there, since this basically touches all of the other product lines that we are offering here in North America. And so this is something that we have been offering since 2016. We were the first vendor out there offering a complete cloud management platform aimed at the SMB space when we launched this back in 2016, so 8 years ago. Basically, everything was either aimed at the enterprise space or was providing access point management only. So we were the first ones to come out there and say, you know what, cloud offerings are great for enterprise, but they're also great for SMB, and to put something together that was able to allow you to manage, your entire network basically through our cloud platform. So we'll talk a little bit here about Nebula and some of the things that are nice about it and why you may want to do it. So when you're setting up a new network for a customer, there's a lot of things that go into it, and each one of those is designated here by one of these little puzzle pieces. So with Nebula, we take what goes into making and building a brand new network. And the goal here is to either eliminate things, simplify things, or just allow you to do things much quicker and much smarter. With the idea being that overall you are going to save money because there's less that you need to purchase, and you're going to save time because we make it easier to set up, configure, and monitor those networks. So Nebula is designed to allow you to manage all of your customers, all of their networks, all of their devices through a single pane of glass. To get to Nebula, you simply go to nebula.zyxel.com, log in and get going. That's where everything is going to be for you. Nebula allows you to set up products and networks without unboxing. So at any point, you can go into Nebula, start setting up a new customer and their sites. And some of the basic configuration is there for you. Once you've settled on hardware and the hardware has been shipped to you, you simply use our mobile app, scan the QR code that's on the outside of most Nebula compatible boxes, and assign the hardware to your customer and to the site that they're going to. And then from that point on, you can configure everything on those products, even though they're still sitting there in your office in the box. You simply then ship the product out to the customer location, plug it in, and as soon as it's got power and an internet connection, it will reach out to the cloud and download firmware updates and the configurations that you've already been setting up in the cloud interface for you. So Nebula's got a number of wizards and tools that make it really easy to get a new network up and running in just a couple of minutes. You can get a new, wired network with Wi-Fi, with guest networking, all set up in less than 5 minutes, no problem at all. So with Nebula, anywhere you've got access to an internet connection and a web browser, you have access to your customers and their networks. So to use Nebula, all you need to do is buy Nebula compatible hardware. The agent to communicate with the cloud and be managed is built into the hardware itself. So there are no cloud keys or CNA devices required. There's no software that needs to be set up on a virtual machine or a server somewhere. It's simply plug and play. So when we started with Nebula back in 2016, we had a similar model to what Cisco Meraki offers, where they have one line of products that are traditionally managed, Cisco, and one line of products that are cloud managed, Meraki. And so we had copied that. But over time, we have gotten away from that. So we introduced something called Nebula Flex. So when you see a product labeled Nebula Flex, what that tells you is that product can be used as this traditional standalone management, or you can manage it in the cloud. And we make it really easy to switch back and forth between modes. So that way you can standardize on certain pieces of hardware and be able to deploy them to customers, whether you're using the cloud for that customer or not. So basically, when you have a piece of hardware, by default, it is operating in standalone mode. If at any point you want to move it to cloud management, you simply scan the QR code on the box or the QR code on the belly label of the product, assign it to a customer and to a site. And within a few minutes, that piece of hardware will automatically detect that you want to manage it in the cloud and automatically reboot itself into cloud mode and download the configuration from the cloud. If at any point you decide you no longer want to manage that device in the cloud, maybe you're swapping it out for new hardware and going to move that to a different customer, you simply log into Nebula, remove it from your inventory, and that piece of hardware will automatically reboot itself into standalone mode. Now, a key thing to keep in mind here, the configurations are completely independent between the modes. So when you convert from one mode to the other, so when you convert from standalone to the cloud, it will automatically download the configuration from the cloud and overwrite any other settings that are on the device. And then if you remove it from the cloud and put it back in standalone, it will factory default itself to the standard configuration. Now, Nebula itself is completely free. So with this free version of Nebula, we call it the base pack. You can manage an unlimited number of devices, an unlimited number of customers, and an unlimited number of sites. So there's no limitation there, and all your core features are available for you. Now, we do offer some optional licenses which unlock additional features, primarily aimed at those of you that are providing managed services. We have our inexpensive Plus pack, which gets you a few extra admin accounts, some greater log storage, things like that. And then we have our Pro pack, and Pro pack unlocks things like cloud storage of all the configuration logs for a year, an audit log for a year, unlimited number of admin accounts, automatically generated and emailed reports, the ability to rebrand the Nebula interface with your logo, things like that. If you'd like to learn more, we do a mostly monthly introduction to Nebula where we go into a little bit more in depth on this. I've also been doing now a tips and tricks or best practices webinar, going through Nebula in a little bit more in depth on some of the features that are there that people either tend to configure wrong or maybe don't realize the benefits they could get from configuring those. So that's something to look at. We've also got a MSP pack license. So the Plus and Pro pack licenses are done on a per device, per org basis. The MSP pack license unlocks some additional, as the name implies, MSP type features that you assign this license to an admin account, and the admin accounts that have an MSP pack license get access to some extra features. It's primarily aimed at making it easier to manage a large team of admins or a large number of customers and sites. And again, we go into a little bit more in depth on that on the normal Nebula webinar. So moving on from Nebula now, we'll start talking about some of our key product categories here. We're going to be talking about wireless switches and security appliances. Now, Zyxel does make a number of consumer type products. Most of those are not offered in North America, and I'm not going to be talking about them on today's webinar. Things like power line adapters, consumer routers, things like that. So we'll start here with our Pro wireless products. So we'll talk about some general features here that are available in all the different products. So to begin with, we have the ability to do single click wireless mesh. It makes it really easy for you if you run into a situation where you don't quite have the coverage you want, and it's too late or it's going to be expensive to run a new cable to an area to add additional access point. You can use mesh to expand out into that area. And now that Wi-Fi 6E and Wi-Fi 7 are here, using 6 gigahertz to provide backhaul for mesh really allows you to provide a enterprise grade mesh network these days. All of our access points have built-in captive portal to provide guest access. Most of our access points can also provide NAT at a per SSID basis, all hosted into the access point. So it doesn't matter what router you're using to be able to provide those sort of guest access features. And we also offer now dynamic pre-shared key, which is an easier way to do a per user basis with each user using their own unique password. Unlike 8021X, there's no certificates or clients that need to be configured. You simply provide each user with their own unique pre-shared key. They all connect to the same SSID. And when they authenticate by using that pre-shared key, we're able to then assign that user to a VLAN based on their key that they're using. So it simplifies enterprise grade wireless within each user having their own unique password. It makes it a lot easier to deploy than 8021X usually does. And with Nebula Pro, one of the Pro Pack features you get is artificial intelligence and machine learning for Wi-Fi. We've got 2 reports in there, Wi-Fi Health and Wi-Fi Aid, where we monitor the wireless connection, alert you to any issues that may be happening, as well as with the Wi-Fi Aid, the ability for us to automatically tweak some of those Wi-Fi settings to optimize the network based on what we're seeing with the wireless user. So it's a really handy feature. When it comes to the construction of our access points, we do it a little bit differently from our competitors. We use a design philosophy called RF first. This allows us to offer lifetime warranties, even on inexpensive access points. So when it comes to an access point, there are 2 common causes of failure on a solid state device like this. One of the most common is capacitor failures. Capacitors are little tubes filled with electrolyte and a medium. They can dry out, they can leak, they can swell up. So our access points do not use any electrolytic capacitors. We only use solid state capacitors, which are significantly less likely to fail over time. The other major cause of failure is heat fatigue. Heat fatigue can cause solder joints to fail. It can cause the little micro switches that are part of your ICs to fail over time. So what you will find on our access points is they all have a large number of vent holes for heat to be able to get out of the housing, where if you look at some of our more inexpensive competitors that only offer a 1 or 2 year warranty, they won't have any of that at all. And in addition to the vent holes to let the heat out, we generally have a large metal heat sink that goes behind the main PCBA, drawing heat off those components on the board to allow it then to escape out of the housing itself. The other part of this is our RF first design. So you will notice we have a lot more shielding on our main PCBA. So in addition to normal EMI shielding, we also add shielding in there for 4G and 5G interference. So what a lot of people don't realize is 4G and 5G uses RF bands that oftentimes border 2.4, 5, and 6 gigahertz. Now, in a typical home environment or a regular small office, doesn't make a lot of difference. But if you're in a larger building, 4G and 5G signals aren't very good at penetrating that building and providing coverage inside. So what happens is on these larger buildings, whether we're talking an office building or a hotel or a large condo building, is they use what's called a DAS system, DAS, to basically take that signal from outside and redistribute it inside the building using what are essentially access points just for 4G and 5G. And oftentimes those are mounted very close to your standard Wi-Fi access points, so they can cause interference. So we put additional shielding in there for these big environments to be able to help reduce that level of interference. The other thing we do is we do not mount our antennas directly onto the PCBA, something that even a lot of our more expensive competitors do. We instead put our antennas on their own board, separated from the main PCBA, and oftentimes we'll have an extra level of shielding between the two to help make sure there's no interference between board level components and the antennas themselves. So with our access points, we offer some different antenna technologies. So most Wi-Fi access points from our competitors, and some of ours as well, obviously, are using static antennas. Basically, the antenna has been designed with the idea that you're going to mount the access point on a ceiling facing down over the area to be covered. So they optimize this signal for that. We also offer access points that have dual optimized antennas. So we'll have one set of antennas that are your traditional ceiling mount optimized, and a second set of antennas that are optimized for wall placement. And then you can switch back and forth between the two based on where you have installed that access point. And we also offer our smart antenna technology. For those of you that are Ruckus resellers or have been in the past, it's similar to their BeamFlex Plus technology. So just a couple slides here real quick, just showing here, your typical AP is designed for ceiling mount installation. However, oftentimes you end up having to mount them on a wall where the signal is less than ideal. You end up sending a lot of your signal up and down to the ceiling and the floor. So in multi-floor buildings, it can cause interference between the floors. So our dual optimized antennas, again, solve this by offering two different antenna patterns, one for ceiling, one for wall, and you can choose that on a per AP and per radio basis which to use. Smart antenna, on the other hand, instead of having one or two sets of antennas, we have an antenna array system in there, which offers hundreds of different antenna patterns. And basically in real time, we can choose which antenna pattern to use for each client. Now, the algorithm that we use is a little bit different than some of our competitors with similar technology. So basically all smart antenna technologies that are out there optimize the antenna pattern for where the client device is in relationship to the access point. What ours also does is ours looks at sources of RF interference and chooses an antenna pattern that reduces interference. So in dense deployments where you've got a lot of access points, you're most likely running into interference issues from other access points, right? For 2.4, you've only got 60 megahertz of space or spectrum that all your access points have to share. When it comes to 5 gigahertz, especially if you're not using DFS channels, you've got a very limited number of channels, again, which have to be shared by all of your access points. So with smart antenna technology, we actually have the ability in these dense deployments to be able to achieve greater than 100% airtime utilization. So in theory, 100% airtime utilization is the max you can hit. You generally max out somewhere in the high 90s. So with smart antenna technology, you can get up as high as 135 or 140% of maximum airtime utilization because smart antenna allows multiple APs to be simultaneously broadcasting on the same channel while limiting the interference that would normally cause. So I'm not going to go through all of our access points today. Instead, I just want to highlight here the main categories we have for our access points. So on the lower end of things, we have our SOHO access points or prosumer access points. These only come with a 2-year warranty. And these are our NWA 50 series and the NWA 90 series. These may also be missing some features, like for instance, the NWA 50 series doesn't offer captive portal. The 90 series doesn't offer load balancing. They're really designed for that prosumer space or a real small office where you only need 1 or 2 access points. Everything else above the Simplicity series here are true, what I'm going to call true business class access points. And these all come with a lifetime warranty and the full Nebula feature set. So load balancing, things like that. On the lower end here, we have our Nebula Flex APs. So these are the NWA 1 series and 2 series. So for instance, the NWA 130BE or the NWA 220, etc. So these will be our entry-level models here. Going up to our W series here. So those are our, these days, our WAX and WBE series. Everything that starts with the letter W is going to come bundled with 1 year of Nebula Pro Pack. You don't have to use it, but it is bundled with it. The W series access points also have the ability to work with our local wireless LAN controller. So if you prefer to do more traditional wireless LAN controller management, you want to look at our W series products. And then also, while looking at the W series, these are where you will find access points with dual optimized and smart antenna built in. We've also got a couple of different solutions here aimed at the outdoor space. So on the low end, we have our NWA 55 AXE, which is IP55 rated. So this can be used to provide outdoor coverage in a backyard. These can also be used to provide point-to-point bridging, so to connect an outbuilding without having to run a new wire, connecting those buildings. On the higher end, we have our W series here, the WAX 655E. This is IP66 rated, so a lot more heavy duty. And you do have to buy the antennas separately. So it has 6 different antennas there that you use. And it provides smart mesh functionality and can handle extremely cold temperatures down to -40 degrees. And then we've also got this guy here. We offer an outdoor enclosure that you can put many of our indoor access points into to help provide protection from rain and moisture, as well as give a slightly larger temperature operating range. So this fits most of our APs, not all of them, but you can use this for any of them. So for instance, oftentimes when trying to create point-to-point links, we have people use our WAX 610D, put that in here and use that to then create the point-to-point link outside. Now, we do have a complete lineup of Wi-Fi 7 products. So Wi-Fi 7 is still new here. It offers some really cool new technologies that aren't available in Wi-Fi 6, including things like the ability to do MLO, multi-link operation. So a client can simultaneously connect to 2 or more radios, on the access point to provide greater bandwidth and lower latency. So I'm not going to go too in depth on that, but that's something else. Just to keep in mind, we do offer a complete lineup. Currently 3 models of Wi-Fi 7 access point, with more coming early next year. So the main benefits from a user use deployment here for Wi-Fi 7 is going to be high density locations. One of the main benefits of Wi-Fi 7 is it can use that 6 gigahertz space. So 6 gigahertz has more unlicensed spectrum available than 2.4 and 5 gigahertz combined. So that means you can have a lot of access points operating at really fast speeds without interfering with each other. So it can help support more APs in a tight environment, more users on a tight environment. And there's a number of other Wi-Fi 7 technologies that help reduce interference between access points when you do have overlapping access point coverage areas. So that's one benefit there for deploying Wi-Fi 7. Another one here is going to be mesh. So for those of you that are old as dirt like me, you may remember quite a while ago, there was a push to doing mesh in the enterprise, and it just didn't work out, right? Mesh just has limitations historically that cause issues. It doesn't really make it an enterprise grade solution. So with Wi-Fi 7, we get to a point where now it makes sense. Most of your users are going to be using 2.4 or 5 to connect to that access point. There aren't a lot of Wi-Fi 7 clients out there. So let's use that 6 gigahertz radio with the really fast speeds to provide your backhaul for your mesh. So that way you can now start deploying mesh without the latency issues and packet drop issues that have plagued business class mesh in the past. So moving on from Wi-Fi now to our switches. So again, we're not going to go through all of the different models, but I'll cover some of the main technologies here and cover our naming rules to help you figure out, what the differences are when you're looking at that price sheet. So one common question we get is, the customer's already got Cat 5e or Cat 6 deployed. Can I upgrade their network to 10 gigahertz, or excuse me, 10 gigabits? Without having to upgrade the cable. So we've got this put together here. So as you can see, Cat 5e can support multi-gig speeds up to 100 meters, but isn't going to be able to support full 10 gig speeds. It will support PoE++ for the 100-meter range there. Cat 6 allows us to provide up to 10 gig speeds up to 55 meters. And if you're trying to provide 10 gig speeds up to 100 meters, you do need to use Cat 6a or better cabling. So when it comes to PoE standards, there are 3 different standards that are out there. There is 802.3 AF, which was the original PoE standard that can provide power of up to 15.4 watts per device. Most products these days are going to be 802.3 ATPoE, so they can provide up to 30 watts of power per device. And then recently, in the last few years now, we're seeing more and more products calling for PoE++. So this is primarily being driven by the faster speed Wi-Fi 7 and Wi-Fi 6E access points. Because to be able to support 3 radios and these faster speeds, it does require more horsepower out of the access point. So oftentimes 30 watts of power just isn't enough. You also see this being used by 4K and 8K pan tilt zoom cameras. So that's 802.3 BT can provide up to 60 watts of power per device. And you will often see this referred to as PoE++. And we offer products basically in these 2 categories here. And of course, these are all backwards compatible. So anything that's 802.3 BT will also work with AT and AF devices. So when it comes to our switches, we have an awful lot of them. And so you can tell a lot about the switch by looking at the model name. So to begin with, all of our switches will start with 2 or 3 letters. And that will tell you the main technology in the switch. A switch starting with ES is going to support speeds up to 100 megabits per second. Obviously, not a lot of these around anymore these days. We have some RG switches, and the RG stands for rugged gigabit. So these are gigabit speeds for switches that are a little bit environment hardened. We have our GS series switches. So a GS switch would be all ports are 1 gigabit per second. If you see a switch that starts with MG, that's telling you it's a multi-gig switch. So usually what that means is all ports are going to be 2.5 gig, although in theory it could be 5 gig. We have the XGS series switches. So GS would be gigabit switches, and the X means 10 gig uplink ports. So if you had an XGS with 24 ports, it would be 24 ports of 1 gig, and then 2 or 4 ports of 10 gig for the uplinks. An XMG, again, the X is going to be a 10 gig uplink, and then the MG is telling you all the other switch ports are going to be multi-gig, either 2.5 or 2.5 or 5 gigabits. And then a switch that is XS means all of the ports are 10 gig. So then also at the ending of the switch model name, you may see some letters. So in the presence of HP, that tells you that that switch is either a PoE plus or PoE plus plus switch. If it ends in EP, it's again going to be a PoE plus or PoE plus plus switch. But it's going to have a lower overall power budget. So for those of you that need, just a couple ports of PoE, the EP series will provide that PoE power for you while saving you some money since you're not paying for PoE budget you don't need. And then FP series is telling you that those switches basically allow you to do full PoE draw on all ports simultaneously. So switches with power budgets up to 960 watts. And then if it ends in the letter F, that's telling you all ports on that switch are fiber ports. So when you're looking at our switches, you will see the letters as we were talking about, and then some numbers. So the numbers tell you how many ports are there. Unfortunately, we're not that consistent. Sometimes we include the number of uplink ports as part of the number there, and sometimes we only mention the main ports on them. So, but just in general, the main ports are usually going to be copper RJ45 ports, and then the uplink ports will either be SFP ports or we have what we call combo ports. So it's one port that has two interfaces. It's a port that, it's a 10 gig uplink that can be either copper or SFP. So you'll have two physical ports, but it's only actually one actual port, either or. And then we do provide a number of different types and speeds of SFP modules for 1 gig uplinks, 10 gig uplinks, and for our stacking cables themselves. So those are something we do provide for you if you need them. So some of the cool features you will find on our switches, in particular when using Nebula, is we have the ability to automatically put devices on different VLANs based on the first 6 digits of the MAC address. So basically you identify the vendor of, say, your IP phone that way, and then anytime you plug in an IP phone to one of your switch ports, it will automatically move it over to your voice VLAN to give it priority. So that way you don't have to go in on a port by port basis and manually configure this yourselves. Nebula gives you visual ability here, so you can quickly see traffic over time on your switches, and you can easily see which switch ports are currently plugged in, whether they're providing PoE power or not, and what the data rate of the connected device currently is. We also have the ability to virtually stack the switches, so that way you can configure ports across multiple switches simultaneously. So when it comes to the business class switches, we've got 3 different primary model series here. Again, a simplicity series, a flexibility series, and an ultimate series. So the simplicity series here, these are going to be our most affordable Nebula Flex switches. They provide most basic layer 2 management features. So these are going to be the most affordable option for you there. Jumping up here, we have our 1315 and 1920 and 30 series switches. So these are going to provide a little bit more feature set than what you would find in the 1915 series. And then when you jump up to our ultimate series here, you get to our layer 2 plus or layer 3 light switches, as well as switches with a full command line interface for those of you that prefer managing through SSH rather than a web GUI. We do also provide PoE power injectors. So currently we've got 2 models here, a PoE 12-30W, so 30 watts of PoE power and 2.5 gig multi-gig uplink ports on it. And then the PoE 12-60W to provide 60 watts of PoE power. And this has 5 gig Ethernet ports built in on it. So just touching really briefly here, we have a new series that's come out fairly recently, which is the XMG 1915 series. So again, the XMG is telling you here that all of the Ethernet ports are multi-gig, and there are 10 gig uplink ports on these switches. These switches can be managed through Nebula if you would like to do so. And 1915 tells you it's got a basic layer 2 feature set as part of it. I also wanted to call attention to our 1350 series of switches. And these are kind of a unique switch offering. So these do require Nebula Flex Pro, Nebula Pro Pack, and these are a Nebula Flex Pro switch. So they are going to come bundled with 1 year Pro Pack out of the box. But these are a series of switches that were initially designed for those of you that do a lot of IP camera deployments, although some of these cool features, may be of benefit to you in other non-IP camera environments. So these unlock some additional features. So one of the things these can do is these can provide data and PoE power up to 250 meters instead of the industry standard 100 meters. These switches have the ability to monitor connected devices. And if they become non-responsive, we can automatically power cycle that device. to get it back online. We also have the ability here, so when you need to, for whatever reason, reboot the switch, such as applying a configuration change, it does not turn off the PoE power. So connected devices don't reboot. They just simply lose connectivity for a few seconds before the device powers back up. So now we'll move on here and talk a little bit about cybersecurity products or security gateways. So one thing that a lot of our competitors do who make security appliances is they also try to provide your antivirus, your content filtering, all of that type of stuff in-house. So we have a different approach to this. We make the hardware, we make the software that runs on the hardware, and we partner with leaders in their field to provide those additional UTM services. So for instance, here, we partner with Norton for our sandboxing capability. We partner with MaxMind to provide geo enforcement. We partner with Siren to provide email security. We partner with was it QoS Moss to provide our app patrol, giving you the ability to create firewall rules based on applications and individual features of those applications instead of having to manually do it by, device and port and IP address and stuff like that. We use WebRoot for our IP reputation filters, Bitdefender and Trellix for anti-malware and antivirus, etc. So one thing I do want to highlight here, even when you're buying some of our security appliances that do not come bundled with UTM features, we do offer 30-day free trials of those UTM features. You simply log into the interface and can turn that on. So it gives you the chance to play with these different levels of extra security without having to make a financial commitment to them. So with our gold licensing or our gold security pack, we have the ability to use AI-powered cloud security, which uses a sandboxing interface to be able to find and quickly recognize zero-day exploits and push out to all connected devices knowledge of these new attacks long before traditional UTM products would be able to find and push out signatures for new types of attacks and threats found on the internet. We have the ability with our security gateways to partner with our access points and basically convert an access point into a cloud managed VPN appliance, providing a simple, easy way to be able to provide remote access to remote workers without needing to configure VPN clients or deal with the risk of double natting that you often run into with traditional VPN appliances. Our SecuReporter reporting, it's a cloud-hosted cloud reporting tool for you. It integrates well with Nebula, although it does not require Nebula. Provides a great way for you to be able to visualize the threats that have been approaching your customers' networks and let you see what we've been able to block and protect them from. It's a great tool to keep an eye on what's going on in your customer networks. More importantly, it's a great tool when it's time to renew services to be able to present to your customers and show them, look, this is what content filtering is blocked. These are the threats that antivirus is blocked. That's why you need to renew. That's why you need to keep using these services. Now, when it comes to the hardware, there's a couple different classes of hardware. On the lower end side of things, we have our SCR50 and USG Lite series. These are sort of a Soho type security appliance. They've got built-in Wi-Fi in them, and they provide license-free UTM-like security services for you. And then going up from there, everything here is going to be your traditional UTM business class firewall appliance. On the lower end, we have our USG Flex series, 50 series, which leads up to our USG Flex series. And then on the high end, we traditionally had the ATP series. That ATP series is going away. We're slowly phasing those out. And we've introduced a new USG Flex H series. So let's talk a little bit about this. So on the USG Flex series, again, we used to offer this and the ATP series. So what's happened is what we've decided is to phase out the ATP series and to provide those same features on the USG Flex series. So basically now you can buy a license that converts a USG Flex into an ATP. So you have the option of using traditional UTM protection on your gateways here, or convert these to an ATP appliance, which provides advanced threat management using that AI and sandboxing to provide that new type of security that you have. And then we recently launched our USG Flex H series. So the USG Flex H series is a brand new product that will replace both the ATP and the USG Flex over time. So it's a new hardware platform that provides significantly faster performance than what you could find on the older ATP and USG Flex series. It's also a completely new software platform for us, which is going to provide for faster updates and newer types of security offerings in the future. Because this is a new hardware or a new hardware and software platform, some of the features that are part of the ATP and USG Flex series have been missing from the H series, but we're getting close to the point where everything is going to be there. I think it's should be full feature parity either at the end of this year or early next year. And then once that happens, we will slowly phase out the USG Flex regular series as well, since these will provide so much better performance for us. So just showing here as a general rule, the main differences here between the different models of products is going to be just the speed of the products, what throughputs they can provide, and then the port configurations. From a feature software standpoint, it's basically the same. It's just the horsepower in the box and how fast it can process packets essentially. But I do want to highlight here the SCR50AXE and the USG Lite 60AX. So the nice thing about these guys, right, is these are kind of like a typical home router, but with extra security features built in, and they're cloud managed. So if you're looking for a cloud managed CPE type device, this may be an offering here for you. So the SCR50AXE is a tri-band built-in Wi-Fi and has all gigabit Ethernet ports. The USG Lite 60AX is basically the same thing, a little bit faster dual radio Wi-Fi, and it has two multi-gig ports. So a one WAN multi-gig port and a LAN multi-gig port. So nice solution for those of you that are looking for a cloud managed CPE type device. And with that, that is the end of today's webinar. So I do want to highlight here, we do have a YouTube channel, Zyxel America channel. Most of our webinars are recorded and will be uploaded there within 1 to 2 days. There's a lot of different Zyxels out there, as I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation. So a Zyxel America channel is the stuff that we produce here in North America. You will also find video case studies and best practices videos, commercials and introductions to new products, things like that as well. And so if you have any questions, go ahead and send them in with the question and answer part of the interface. Currently, there are no questions for me to answer, but I will stick around here for just another minute or two in case you're busy typing something up. My email is up there on the screen, so you can always email me directly with questions or feedback. If you are one of your partners, you have a salesperson, either Jacob, Andy, or David, so you can always provide feedback through them as well. And we do have user forums at forum.zyxel.com. And that is generally the first place where we post security bulletins, release notes on new firmware and stuff like that. So it's a nice tool, even if you don't have any interest in talking to fellow Zyxel users. It's a great thing to keep an eye on just to make sure you're staying on top of all the latest things that are going on. It is also monitored by our headquarters, product management and support teams. So occasionally they will answer questions there, but they do keep an eye on it to monitor for feedback and suggestions, to help us figure out which features people are looking for and what we should prioritize next. We've got no questions, so I'm going to go ahead and end today's webinar. Thank you for joining us today, and hopefully I'll see you on one of our future webinars. Thank you.